go ahead and get started. All right, Koko, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on. You're obviously a legend. Your research has gone throughout the depths of all the different communities. People are everywhere talking about it. And I definitely think that a lot of the things that you've done have shown us a new way of doing research and how to give a really objective, not subjective opinion on things. And so just very excited. All that to say, very excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's really been great to finally actually catch up with you and be a part of your podcast. I've heard lots of big things, and yeah, really happy to be here.
Well, really grateful that you would take some time out of your very diligent due diligence to come chat. So anyways, I want to kind of start in the beginning. Would love to just hear your story of all things Koko.
Okay, cool. Well, I mean, what we talking about? Like, am I sitting in the leather seat talking about my childhood?
Hey, we can go back as far back as you want. All's fair game.
Okay. Well, I was born and raised in London, and then my family moved to Switzerland. My dad worked in finance at actually, funnily enough, Credit Suisse, which obviously is legendary status now. And so I grew up in sort of like a very Swiss culture outside, but I mean, I went to an international school, so it was actually a very international environment that I grew up in from about the age of 12. And yeah, so after I finished uni, I actually decided that I wanted to travel, so I went and learned Spanish in Spain when I worked for Merrill Lynch for about a year. Kind of followed in my dad's footsteps, got a job out there and started sort of the investment banking kind of thing. But I was very kind of like I've always been kind of like a bit of a free spirit. So I kind of just up and left Spain, said I was done with that, moved on and started working in sales and account management at Procter & Gamble. So I moved into kind of like retail and FMCG, which is food and beverage type sales in supermarket type things. And then I decided I wanted to be an actor. So I retrained to be an actor. And actually, as of this year, I'm pretty much closing that side of my sort of professional journey. Not completely. I still have an agent who's very enthusiastic about what she can sort of do for me. So I've kind of got an agent still and representing me as an artist. And so, but I'm very, very, very specific about what I will go up for and what I will do, because actually, since the pandemic, my passions have been just turned towards like crypto, blockchain, Web3, and I'm just absolutely enamored with the space, even though it's like crazy, right? We see all sorts of stuff and a lot of stuff that can bring down your faith in the space. But I still, despite all of that, I think it's actually an amazing space with some amazingly smart, intelligent, ethical and people with integrity. You know, I think the people who don't have integrity probably get a little bit too much airspace, so to speak. But beneath it all, I think there's a lot to root for this space. Yeah.
Wow. So investment banking to sales and account management to being an actor and then into crypto. I mean, that's incredible. What a journey.
Yeah. It's I mean, it feels like so whimsical when I look back at it. But actually, I spent a lot of time in each space. Like I spent a decade in acting. And in the middle of acting, like, because you're not 24/7 acting, like it's not like a normal job where you go in 9 to 5 kind of thing, right? So at any given time I could be working for 6 months, and then like 3 months I'm literally doing nothing, just auditioning, finding the next job, and then I'll be working solidly for 2 months, because I did a lot of touring around the UK. I even toured beyond the UK, but most of my touring is in the UK. And in fact, I minted my Neo Tokyo in the middle of Sheffield, and then missed the Vault mint because I was on stage in the middle of a tour. So it was like I was like on stage, and then I'd run home and I'd check my computer. I'd be sitting there trying to get on Angie's pub and trying to mint or get my wallet in. And Yeah, yeah. My co-actors thought I was crazy, but I love it. So
How fun. So then
yeah.
what was the timeline on when you first learned about crypto, and how did that progress from you being in the acting space and then
Mhm.
learning about crypto, and then you've got to be some level of way deep in the rabbit hole to learn about Neo Tokyo and to actually figure out those riddles and end up minting. Like you've got to be at least partially a degen in some ways. Like what was that? How did that? What was that
Yeah.
progression? What was that timeline?
Well, I'd heard of Bitcoin in like 2014, 2015. People were talking about it, and people were like saying, oh, have you heard of this thing called Silk Road? You can buy certain things off there, but you need to own Bitcoin. So I was just like, oh, that's interesting. What's this Bitcoin business? So I'd heard of it from that. But I never really kind of jumped in. All I heard from sort of like the people that I spoke to was that it's a volatile asset. So if you try and buy it, you may lose the value of what you bought. So so then I was like, oh, okay, maybe not. And I wasn't really, yeah, I wasn't really switched on to it. It really was during the pandemic when actually I finally in my career up until then had some headspace to kind of think of something other than acting. Because if you like anybody who's an artist of any kind, or even a business owner or a startup, right, it consumes you. And anything I do, I get completely consumed by, and it's very tunnel vision. So that's what I did for like 10 years constantly. But when the pandemic hit, well, actors just basically flatlined in terms of work, right? There's literally no work, especially in the first 2 to 3 months of that period. And I had gone home, sadly, because my grandmother passed, and I was quarantining in a corner of the house to keep my parents safe. And I just had nothing to do. And just, at that time after a death, you kind of reflect on life, reflect on your life, family's life. And I just thought about my grandmother and how she really wanted for nothing in her life. And that was a really good comfort to me, that she passed, she was 93. She, she went from her husband's, like, her husband had a good job as a teacher, and she was a teacher, and they had like a solid pension, and I had a home. And then when my grandfather passed, moved in with my dad, and we waited on her hand and foot because we loved her very much. And it kind of made me realize, like, I'm the kind, I don't want kids personally. So I kind of saw that future for myself, and I was like, I'm an actor. I've not really had any savings in my life. I'm not gonna have kids who are gonna look after me. There was a lot of things I suddenly realized I hadn't really done any favors for my future self. So that's where the starting point was. I started going down the YouTube rabbit hole on how to just become a little bit more financially savvy. I'd been out of that sort of financy industry for good 10 years. So I wanted to get back into it. What's the thing? What are people doing right now? And then it's kind of like a gateway drug. You start off with normal finance channels, and then they kind of start introducing you to different things. And then actually, weirdly, I discovered the two people that were really promoted, actually three people. There was BitBoy, wasn't really into his content. There was Elio Trades, who I was very much into his content, and Crypto Lark.
Mhm.
But I think I go through, like, so basically it was just an insane amount of YouTube content consumption when I was quarantining. And can't knock YouTube. Like, there is a lot of stuff you have to sift through that is, for lack of a better word, crap. But there is a lot of good stuff. There's a lot you can learn. If you're switched on to how to sift through that, then I think you can learn a lot. And I did. And so I continue to this day to inhale content on YouTube, as well as, obviously, I have a host of other more reliable sources. But I actually think YouTube, from a research perspective, is a really good pulse on what the sentiment is in the market, or even just like getting news content and just getting information quickly, because sometimes I can't read as fast as I can watch something at 2x speed, which for me is now normal speed. On YouTube, I can't watch anything at normal speed now. It just seems like they're talking in slow motion.
So let me pause you there for a second. So it started with this thread of I want to start doing favors for my future self,
Mhm.
and that takes you down the personal finance road, and then it's crypto starts to pop up here and there. What was that initial reaction to crypto? Like, were you just open to whatever and learning about this different stuff and really no bias coming in? Or were you more like, oh, this crypto thing, it's still volatile, so I kind of have my guard up a little bit about it? Like, what was kind of the adoption curve
Mhm.
in your own mind for crypto, and what did that actually look like as you were doing your research?
Yeah, so my research in the beginning obviously was is much more rudimentary than what I do now, simply because I just didn't know anything. Like I didn't know anything about the tech, I didn't know anything about the space, the people, or anything. But my initial sort of instinct was, well, I need to start putting my money in places where I can make some money. Yeah, I want to make some money. And so it wasn't really originally altcoins. It started off with like trying to understand Bitcoin, because it just the concept of it started to sink in. And so I read there's some really good books, but I started actually Crypto Assets by Chris Boniski is a really good starter book, and then the Bitcoin Standard, and another Bitcoin book by, funnily enough, he's a political comedian, but he tells a very good story about the process of how he understood Bitcoin. And I think those kind of books were really kind of seminal in getting that aha moment that I think a lot of people need when they come from a non, if you're not if a finance person and you haven't really studied the concept of how money works in a global economy, like Bitcoin doesn't fully make sense. And even when you try and make sense of it, it's really hard to grasp. And so you have to go back and then unpeel the layers of how the economy works and how money works and how governments make it and all this kind of stuff. But I had the time to do it. And I think that's the beauty of what happened in that sort of moment, was I had the time to just sit there all day, every day for weeks, I think at least 2 weeks, and just consume this, read books, read more. Um, and then it just took me for, so the technology kind of, when you get that aha moment with that technology, I've always been a novelty driven person anyway, so I really enjoyed sort of discovering how this could really disrupt the world. And so like it's a bug that's gotten into me. I'm like, disruption is the name of the game in business, in sort of trying to make changes in the world, you know. Like it makes me think of sometimes as an actor, when you do a lot of theatre work, there's always, like, especially in the fringe theatre scene, there's a lot of these kind of hard-hitting political plays that are really trying to change situations that we have in the world, like, I don't know, political problems, homelessness, all sorts of like challenges that we have. Theatre is like a medium to like discuss it, or pick a topic or something like that. But in theatre, sometimes I felt helpless beyond telling the story to actually make any changes. Whereas I sometimes think that the technology that's happening with crypto and AI, like, you create it and it has an immediate impact. Like if you can actually get people to adopt it, obviously that's a big challenge in itself, but it has such a tangible connection to actual change. If you want to see change in something, like Satoshi Nakamoto wants to see change in the financial system and the way money works, so he created something that has now propagated through the world, so that was to me also really inspiring.
Yeah, what an interesting concept of like information and that's ability to change things, because in a way ideas can spread faster than anything,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of times, especially if it's a groundbreaking idea, or if it's a disruptive idea, at least what I've noticed is what people will do is they want to tell other people, especially the people that they care about what those other people think, because when you're the first in a social group to bring a piece of information to that group, you gain social currency in the eyes of that group. It's all about status.
Mm-hmm.
So ideas can spread really quickly like that. Like for example, if something bad happens or there's a huge breaking piece of news, typically you pick up the phone and call somebody and tell them immediately, because you want to be the one to tell them, because that makes you look better in their eyes, because you're the bringer of that information. You're
Mm-hmm.
higher up the chain. So like ideas can spread really quickly too. The technology, on the other hand, but then it's like, okay, well, how much does that information actually change behavior, or change the result, or create results in the form of action and an actual meaningful shift in society? But the technology, on the other hand, that might be a little bit slower to be adopted, but that can totally change. It can totally change the game. I mean, something like in iTunes or a Bitcoin, or like a texting app, or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
that changes how people interact, or how people it could change a huge part of the world in a very meaningful way. So it's a really interesting concept there. What do you think is the reason that that you were drawn to that? I mean, was it just you were there and kind of fired up about stuff because the pandemic was going on, and so it was like that was just kind of on the brain, or is that something that's more close to your heart, and just a recurring theme throughout your life and what you've cared about?
Well, I've always been a little bit cynical about how the world works, and I've always wanted to sort of have some kind of way of impacting people's like behavior change or thought change, or looking at things in a different way. And I guess I think another thing is I at that point also become quite cynical about theatre. It was not a great space I was in terms of like my theatrical career, because a lot of us in the arts community in the UK felt very much abandoned by the government. Felt felt like there was loads of things happening at the time where they were giving support and furlough and all this stuff, but kind of people who were self-employed and artists kind of straddle this area where they're self-employed, but actually a lot of their income comes from sort of part-time work, but those jobs couldn't give them furlough. It's a long story, but it was just it was kind of like sad to see, because there was a lot of people I knew who were in like a lot of financial trouble, and I was feeling very angry on their behalf. And I kind of had a deep thought about like how theatre in the UK, and a lot of industries, I'm sure, not just theatre, but we are self-sustaining. So in that sense, it's like, okay, so if you look at a theatre audience on any given day, with the exception of West End, which relies on a lot of tourists and things, but standard theatre in the UK, the audience will majority be made up of people already in the industry. So actors will go see other actors, or directors. So like I would go to theatre like 2-3 times a week, and I would always, no matter what, run into someone or several people that I knew. And it's this kind of cyclical space where it's become a bit of a leak, so to speak. Like majority of the UK probably don't feel an affinity to theatre. They think it's pompous, or feel like those spaces aren't welcoming of people like them, or all sorts of different sort of ideas that they have. But it makes you realize that if you want to change ideas, or you want to change the world in a way, you have to always look outwards and not just feed your own sort of crew, which I think sometimes happens in quite a lot, and it's currently happening right now in crypto, in that the people, it's just like a liquidity cycle, isn't it? People are buying from each other. There's no new people, there's no new inspiration happening. It's all sort of like self-sustaining, for lack of a better word. So that's why I kind of got really interested in what we are doing in NGMI Lab. But also what I try and do personally is always try and explain and write stuff that is simplifying concepts in a broader way, like connecting it to real world relatable things.
Yeah, so let's actually, I think this is a perfect time to segue into talking about NGMI Lab, how that all came about. And then let's talk about like why it is so special, and breaking down these complex things into simpler to understand ideas. But would love to hear that story and segue into that.
Yeah. NGMI Lab started in Neo Tokyo. So for any of your listeners who don't know Neo Tokyo, so Neo Tokyo is a community, NFT community, come together by Elliot Wayman and Alex Becker, who created it. And it's meant to be sort of like a masterminds for business owners and entrepreneurs who want to build and create inside of the Web3 gaming phenomena. And so when we all sort of got together in the hype of the bull, or near the end of the bull, really, bull market, we kind of created a division. And it just came about where people were being recruited to help research and filter in a really kind of unbiased, non-shilly way all the deluge of projects that were coming out. And it was just nonstop. At one point I was like, how can we physically possibly keep up with the number of projects coming out on a daily basis? But the aim was that for the community, we are creating reports which will give people a way of quickly assessing whether or not this project is going to make it or not, right, into the next bull, as a company, as a concept. And well, I wasn't actually part of Team NGMI in the beginning, but this other team called NGMI, which I was working alongside, they were nicknamed Team NGMI because they just labeled 99% of the projects that came across them as not going to make it. So they were like, oh, you guys are just Team NGMI because everything's stamped NGMI. And then as the bear market started and people dropped off, a lot of people sold, Neo Tokyo went quite quiet for some time, but definitely the research department just dwindled. It was just not possible or sustainable because no one was doing this paid. No one was being paid for any of this. This is all just part of the excitement originally that we had, but all that kind of excitement died away. But there was a few of us who kept really kind of pushing and wanting to dig deep and find, keep finding those gems and sifting through the loads of projects. And so Jess from NGMI, he actually invited me to the little group. It was basically the only group that was actually still functioning. It was just me and Tracy, who are like working by ourselves because our teams had abandoned us. So we kind of consolidated into one group. And then we also then at that time, Alex Becker had been saying, oh, you guys need to build outside of Neo Tokyo. That's the whole point. Build outside, but you can partner with Neo Tokyo if you want. Make an application. So we did, but we didn't really succeed at that time. So we decided we're just going to go it alone and build. But our heart and our loyalty and our beginnings are all thanks to the creation of Neo Tokyo. And then we went through sort of like a phase where we kind of delivered for research for the sort of satellite VCs. So Jess was working for VVV. Myself and Frank were doing some work for Spectre. And I was also working for SitCap, just sort of delivering research and screening projects. And but we realized actually this was really useful for people, the average retail investor. They don't get access to this level of, hear the dog. 1 second.
Friends, this is part of the fun of doing podcasts and being a raw, unedited, unfiltered show. Sometimes we get some bonus guests on the pod.
Hello. And this is Bear. This is my brother's dog, but he comes and stays with us a few times a week. And he's very protective. I don't know why. I guess it's living in an apartment block. He just hears anyone who walks past the door, he just starts barking. So don't mind.
I hear that Bear has a real sniffer for the alpha. So Bear wants to share.
Yeah. Bear, you want to share? Oh no, he's just having a little nap. Sorry about that. Where were we?
So talking about how y'all had branched into working with the different VCs and giving this really great information to retail folks, and you started realizing that retail people don't really have access to this in-depth level of research.
Yeah, and you know, it was great that we went through that path, because actually through working with our VC partners, we learned a lot about specifically what VCs are looking for beyond just our business analysis. What I guess you know, all the different intricacies that a VC specifically would look for. And so we're lucky enough to have like board advisors who work at places like Bitcraft and I can't remember the other one, but yeah, like big VCs like that. And so we were able to hone and get real feedback on the way that our reports were looking and what information to include. And we have, you know, people like Jess, who's got a really great background in health systems. So, you know, he really understands how audit works from sort of like a medical background point of view and a business point of view. And obviously my experience working in sales and business and finance kind of factors into that too. So we kind of built that report basis, like our template based on that. But now we've realized, actually we realized that actually we want to give this product to retail, like, and we don't want to do two, because I think working for both customer bases is just, it's too much and it splits our focus. We want to laser focus on retail. And in that way, we can change our pricing, because I think our pricing was kind of trying to split between the two and not appealing to the retail customer base. So watch this space, where it's imminently launching our new pricing, which I think will be much more appealing and affordable to your everyday, especially noobs, because I think, and that goes back to my question and my discussion about broadening the pie, getting more people that are outside the space into the space. Is like, how do you make it easy to understand, inclusive, and quick onboarding, right? The apps themselves are developing things like that quite well. I see that a lot of people are like, yeah, we need to be grandma friendly, but they're not responsible for the whole education of the whole industry, right? And you've got great content creators like Coin Bureau, right, doing some really great content on YouTube, but it can't just be falling on one person. So we're another outlet where we'll be delivering a lot of ways of understanding concepts and ideas and language in crypto. So that's where we're going to be going more and more.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to see, and I don't have any inside info on the pricing and whatnot. So, I'm discovering this as well. But I would love to see something like, there's like a monthly subscription if you want to get access to the whole library, or if you just want one report, maybe you pay a one-time fee for that one particular report. And then I would also love to see something where, and I was kind of chatting with you about this, in the DMs of like, okay, what if there was like a public leaderboard where everybody had their own NGMI score, and they could compete to see how much they could bring up their score. And so that way everybody would kind of know, like, these are the important things to be looking for in a project. And I'm almost thinking like, Ready Player One, back to that story. It at least, I don't remember if it was in the movie, but in the book they had this leaderboard of the big quests that they were on, and each
Oh
time they
yeah.
would solve a new step in the puzzle, they would get points based on different things. And so they would always be competing to see who was highest on this public leaderboard. And so like the different projects could compete to see who's highest on the, NGMI leaderboard. That to me would be such a cool thing. And I think it would help people cut through a lot of the noise, because there's so many different aspects of a crypto project that just don't exist in a normal business investment. Like, you don't have annual reports to look through from the stock market. You just don't have that. It's very hard to see financials if they even exist in that
Mm-hmm.
project, much less get access to them and see all that different
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And then you have tokenomics, you have your token economy, the different, like, does value accrue to the token, or does it accrue to the project itself and that internal business? And then how does that all work out? And then you have NFTs in addition to the coins. And it's like all that can get really complicated, and figuring all that stuff out, like with the unlocks and all that different stuff. Like, that is a lot of stuff to fully grasp. And it may all just be hype at the end of the day. And I don't know. I don't know. I don't really know what drives a coin to grow 100x in a period of time. Like, I don't have that magic
Mhm.
wand, but I'd be really interested to see like what are these characteristics that really are the most important of all the different, the pillars of information that you dig through in a project. And then yeah, very curious about how that's going to be reflected in, like, if there's some sort of leaderboard or something later on down the road.
Yeah, I mean, we would definitely, so we've started that NGMI sort of data page on our website, actually, and that's actually hasn't got a paywall on it, so anybody can go and see that's the scores. Just it's very interesting actually. What it would be great if we could add a functionality that had a live element to it, almost like drawing on on-chain data, because I've been talking about with the team as well how I really, especially in this bear market, seeing a bunch of projects just like that may have had like a lot of promise in the beginning have gone under, and down to the fact that they ran out of runway or are struggling because of runway. And I think in a bull or even in the sort of euphoria moment of early part of your investment, nobody thinks, oh, well, what is the treasury of this company? Because that's a very real challenge for a team to manage. And so we definitely want to add a lot of like different weightings, and sort of granular detail into the scoring. We went from at the beginning of our algorithm, it was a equal weighting for every score, but we've actually moved it now, it's weighted. So gaming has different weighting to an infrastructure project across the categories. So really proud of that. Our team have sort of built that. So the next thing would be is something that could be live and edited. And I would actually really love it if we could have more interaction from founders, because the truth is that none of these scores are set in stone. If you get a low score, you should be able to get a higher score if you improve on those metrics. And likewise, some projects that like were the greatest at that moment can 6 months down the line paint a very different picture. So we're very aware of that. And we're trying to figure out ways of doing it whilst also sort of keeping up with the content that we want to drive out. But yeah, totally think that's a great idea. Speaking of which,
Yeah.
I've been speaking to, I spoke to Johnny from Hustlepedia, because when I saw that Nexus was coming out, I was very, very, very excited to see that, because it's like everything that we would need for researching a game. Like it would be so good. And so I don't want to like jump the gun, but there's some ideas that I have, Johnny and I have, to work together and sort of bring NGMI and Nexus together in a really cool way. Because I think he's got the data for a lot of these things, and then we've got the sort of the analysis and the sort of more sort of qualitative element of it that we can bring to the space. So, I mean, within Neo Tokyo, we've got it all, really.
Yeah, I love that. And then I don't know if it's possible, but maybe, and I don't know if y'all have explored this too, but like if Mint Defense had a place to play there too, because maybe there's some sort of security score or something that they can help provide to y'all for even more more analysis, and because the security is a big piece too, of like,
Yeah,
well,
for
how
sure.
safe is this really? Like that could be a big one.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to just touch on one quick thing, talking about treasury management and looking at the treasury of these projects. There's something I think a lot of people miss on the treasury part, is those numbers are very misleading, because you may have a treasury of $50 million US dollars valued. However, if the majority of your treasury is in your own native token, then really that's not worth $50 million, because if you just go market sell that those tokens, those coins, in order to get to be able to use that treasury to go do stuff, if people won't accept those coins directly for payment, then that the price impact of such a big market order is going to drive that price down. Therefore, you're going to have a massively decreased amount of buying power if you just go dump all that on the marketplace. So I would, and I know this is kind of a very niche segment, but we brought it up, so let's talk about it. Like, I would be very wary of what is the actual makeup of that treasury, and can those values sustain 100%, open market order sell if they needed to actually use that cash to go do stuff. That's something I think people get tricked. They get tricked all the time, and they don't realize that they're being tricked in that way.
Yeah, no, I definitely, that's a big issue. And also I would say that if you're an early stage young company, like, do you even have, like you said, the liquidity is just not there to be able to handle a sale like that. So you'd have to be very careful, with managing your own token, which then it makes you understand why, because we've had this debate as well, a slightly different one, which is like when you're assessing a project in the early stages, there's two types of roads you can go down. So one road is that, they've got great backers, they've got big backers, Animoca Brands or Dragonfly Capital or whatnot. And so they're going to do well because they're backed by these people. And then you've got those ones that are completely like bootstrapped and community focused and fair launch and all that kind of thing. And which one is better? And they both have their place. But sometimes I think, well, if you have funding from like VC funding, for example, there is that element of, well, you've raised the capital in dollars or something. So you actually have a treasury that's sitting in a much safer coin than, say, if you're kind of sitting on your own tokens and do a fair launch, and then a certain chunk is sitting in your treasury, and then you're relying on that as your sort of income. So yeah,
Totally. And then there's the whole, well, if you raise from these groups, then you've got to pay attention to the unlockonomics. I'm sorry, I'm trying to make that a thing. You got to pay
unlockonomics,
attention. Yeah, you got to
yeah,
pay attention to the unlockonomics, because they're going to dump on your ass as soon as they possibly can. Like, think about it. If you're going in and you're buying into a project and you get a certain amount of, like, you buy in, you get a certain amount of tokens, and you're at anything above a 1x, you have an obligation to your investors to generate a return. So the second that you can deliver that return to them, even if it's not the ideal time, because you want to hold on, you want to buy and hold and have the 1000x. If you have investors, you just want to give them their money back and then, let the rest ride, or give them some sort of returns. You can show that as proof to,
yeah,
that you don't suck. So that's a big piece of it. Like, a lot of the VCs and a lot of the big investors, they're going to dump as soon as they possibly can. If there's equity and tokens, they're going to try to dump as many tokens as they need to in order to hit neutral, like, basically play on house money at that point. Like, make the equity free by dumping enough of the tokens to where it cancels out that initial. So there's just a lot of things to like think through on that. But I want to share, and I know we're wrapping up here soon. I want to share kind of a formula that I have of, like, these are some of the things that I'm looking at when I'm thinking about investing in a project. I would love for you to tell me to remove or add things that should or should not be there. So I break it down to the 7 T's. First T is team. Who are they? What's the relevant experience? Are they dedicated or distracted by other shit? 2, tokenomics. What's the supply? Circulating versus total. What are the sinks? What are the sources? How does value accrue to the token? Markets, liquidity. What's the ease of access? What chains are they on? Who are the existing investors, both named and incognito whales? And then what are the unlockonomics on that? 3, tailwinds and headwinds. What are the macro impacts, technology impacts, political impacts? Who are the competition? Who wants to kill it? How would they do it? And how likely are they to succeed? Target market is the 4th T. Who are the customers of both the business and the token? And what's the recurring buying power of those customers? Who are the partners? Who are they working with? 5 is trademark. Does the brand mean anything? Does anybody care? Is there a loyal audience? Is there word of mouth? Is that word of mouth positive? Are there any online reviews? Is that positive or negative? 6, truths. These are just like the hard truths. Is there a real business model? Do financials exist? Can we see them? Are there any unfair advantages for the project? What's the marketing look like? Is there real hype around this? Do influencers care? Are they trying to pump and dump, or are they actually trying to support it? And then, do I have any real evidence to support any of my findings? And then the 7th one is total value. what is the intrinsic value of the project, which is looking at future, future cash flow and future earnings, discounting that back to present value. So like, what's the value of the project truly? How closely will this value correlate with token price? And then at what token price or better would there exist a big enough margin of safety to prevent from losing money from any stupidity on my side? So those are kind of like the criteria here.
Hmm.
What am I missing? And yeah, what would you add, subtract from that?
I mean, you've done a really, really good, thorough job. Give me did you say there were 7, right? Just give me the top
Mhm.
7 titles.
Oh, sure. So there's team, tokenomics, tailwinds, target market, trademark, truths, and total value.
Okay, so you're with the T's. Yeah. I think one thing you mentioned, but I think it has becoming more and more relevant, especially during a bear market, is the community, like the true community behind a project. Because
Mhm.
we talk about like the new and shiny versus the old last bear market projects, right? Now,
Yeah.
I don't think it's true to say that old projects will never come back. There's loads of old projects that will come back, but yeah, it's true probably that 99% of the projects won't come back. But really, the ones who do come back have huge potential versus the new ones, and that's basically because first mover advantage, for one. First mover advantage, as long as they maintain that advantage, and it takes time to cultivate a really strong and loyal community, and community is also a reflection of you committing and following up with all your commitments, right? So if a company or a project is growing and cultivating its community really well, by the next bull market, it will fly, because the more people you have that are really behind the project, yeah, you have these armies, but I think nowadays with all the different community hubs, you can really actually tell. You go into Discord, there's a history. If there's been like big blow ups or people complaining, you will find it, right? And so you can, in your research, can go and check the history. What do people really think? If they want to complain about something, they will complain. And especially in the Discord, because if they're part of the community and they genuinely have some complaints, people sort of shout FUD when it's on Twitter in a public space. A lot of leaders are like, just come to us. Fine, come to us. They'll talk about it in the Discord. And if you can see people really responding to the community and responding to queries and challenges, and stepping up for the community, I think that will really pay dividends in the bull run. They will have a product that's far more mature, far more advanced, has a more loyal user base. And that user base talks to other people. So when the whole new set of people come in, they will go to the people who, and when they build their friendships and their communities, they will talk to people who can say, hey, these guys have been around for so long. Not Project X, that's the new shiny thing. Yeah, that has a place in Pumpermentals and excitement and innovation. But I definitely think it's something that I'm actually looking into, and funnily enough, going to be writing a piece about in the New Tokyo newsletter. So I've been thinking about it a lot. Is just about building that community through the bear. Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, Koko, I want to thank you so much for coming on the pod today. It's been a lot of
Yeah.
fun. We had a surprise guest appearance from
Yeah.
Bear, and yeah,
I think my
hopefully we
dad
get
made an
some.
appearance too. But I've
Well, if
got
he has some
blurring in the
alpha,
background, so
if he's got some alpha, happy to have him
yeah.
share as well. So may bring some
No, it was a
wisdom.
pleasure.
Yes, totally a pleasure. Very much appreciate you coming on the
Yeah.
pod today. I know you're very, very busy, and got a lot of good work that you're doing, and you're deep in due diligence all the time. So just want to thank you for taking a few moments to come chat.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ben. It's been a real pleasure.
Likewise,
Yeah.
you're the best. Thank you for everything
Yeah,
you
you
do
too.
for Neo Tokyo and for the Citadel and for all of
And
crypto.
you, of course.
And looking forward to our next chat.
Yeah. All right. Speak soon then, Ben.
Take care.
Ciao.